What's up, guys, and welcome to an episode of the Snaj V Show. Today, I kind of want to just dive straight into more so my experience as a professional athlete. And I want to start there because that really kind of helped me, I guess, create the characteristics that I have now and everything that I've kind of transformed into since being there. And it's been a while now, it's been a few years, and I want to kind of just revisit that time and that story because it really kind of showcases how much I've been through my own physicality, my own mentality, and everything that's kind of been around who I am today and the characteristics and the values that I have. But I want to start by kind of going all the way back. You know, I started playing soccer when I was 8 years old, and I played for 20 years, and I dedicated my entire life to it, you know. So when I finally went pro, I was in it for 7 years, and that was such an incredible time just to be a part of a team, to be a part of an environment where everyone was striving to be better. And one of the biggest differences that I really always tried to make and impact was to be that player that works the hardest, be that player that's on the field and just, doing every single thing that I can to, be shown, be noticed. You make sure that I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, because a lot of the time we can just show up and we're just showing up, and that's just never going to be good enough if you're trying to make it. It's just showing up is just never going to be good enough because you're really only doing 50% of the work. You're not actually doing more than just showing up. So for me, it was just something that I just needed to dedicate my time, my attention. I had to be so strategic in everything that I was doing. So where I was so fortunate was that I had a team of coaches. I had a team of coaches that helped me every step of the way, both on the field, off the field, everything in between. And that's why it's so important to have a coach. If you don't have a coach, you're going to be lost. You're just going to be almost going through the motions without truly knowing, are you doing the right thing? You might have an idea. We all have an idea. But when you don't have someone that can really guide you and really is going to ultimately know what's best for you, you're kind of just going to go and easily become complacent and maybe give yourself some hard things, but it's never going to be really what could honestly take you to the next level. And that's why, people that have coaches, they're the ones that want to go to the next level. So as an athlete, I had every coach you can think of. I had obviously my head coach, my assistant coach. I had a strength and conditioning coach. I had a mentality coach. I had my own dietitian. I had my careers advisor. I had a running coach. I had every coach you can think of, because when you're trying to be a pro, there's so many different elements to being an athlete that you don't really even know about until you're in it. And when you're in it and you're constantly finding flaws in how you are and what you're doing, there's always going to be someone that knows exact, the pathway and the blueprint to make you better into what you're meant to be when you're essentially kind of struggling with that flaw or that weakness. So, I made it through so much of my career without getting injuries, which was awesome. But then, once I had one, I was okay. I was okay with some of the overuse injuries that I had. It was just because I did so much, while other people were putting in 20 hours, I was putting in 25. And, that sometimes caused me to have more issues, because for me, it was I would go more and more and more, and I wasn't necessarily thinking about being more strategic and smarter with what I was doing. I just thought about doing more, and that doesn't always work for people. So, I found myself in the position where I had my very first soccer related injury, and I ended up needing a surgery for it, and that was for my ankle. And I went in and they cleaned up my ankle, and they said that everything was fine. And then 5 years later, I find out that basically needed to be fully reconstructed. And at this point, I had finished my career, so it was really upsetting that I essentially needed something, but they got it wrong the first time. And that's where it kind of, you start to understand that sometimes when you think you're going down the right path and you're putting your trust into people and they're not necessarily giving you the right answers, that's where you can get pretty hurt, and you can start to struggle with the idea around well, who do I trust here? So After I did my ankle, I then was unfortunately hit, and I ended up tearing my ACL. And I tried to make a comeback, and second game back, I retore my ACL. And at that point, I started thinking, maybe it's time for me to let go of this and move forward. And so I did. I was like, my second ACL, I was 6 months in, and I decided to move to America. And I didn't realize how much of my identity lied in being a soccer player. People would ask me so what do you do? And I would tell them I play soccer. So I'd be like, oh, okay, you're a soccer player. And that became who I was. And at the time I didn't realize, but it's not who I am. I am not just a soccer player. I'm far more than that. And as all of us should understand that, you are not just what you do. You're so much more than that. So easily can we become attached to this identity of what we do. And we are not what we do. We really are ultimately everything we're made up of. And, when someone asks you, who are you? Your idea and your concepts of what you are should be surrounded by your values, your virtues, like what you're all about. There are some people that are all about controversy, and there's some people that are all about being patient and honest, and there's some people about working hard. It just depends on what you want to be about. So it's not necessarily just in the idea of your job or whatever that you do for the majority of your day, because you are not what you do. You are what you are all about, as a human being. But I got lost in that identity. And, at the time, there was no transitional period where someone talked to me about that. And when someone would be around and be like, okay, so this is what you're going to do. You're going to go from, being in training for 20 to 30 hours a week into nothing, you don't know what that's going to feel like. And really, that's where the struggle lies. And that's where most of us lie. How many times do you need to take a break from work? You're 38, 45, whatever it is, however many hours you work. How does it go when you go from working, 40 hours a week to doing nothing? There's no transition. It's just it's bam, it's right there. And a lot of us lose that sense of purpose in all of that. So when you lose your purpose, you start to feel a bit lost. And when you're feeling lost, you don't know what to do first. You don't even know where you're going. You don't know which direction you're trying to head. But ultimately, what you're trying to do here is find what your purpose is. And I struggled so hard with that. I was fortunate that I had fitness to fall back to, but that didn't necessarily matter because fitness wasn't fulfilling me. I was still coaching a lot of people, still training and doing all those things in the gym, but it wasn't the same. It's not the same when you're not really essentially part of that team environment. And you're not really striving for a championship or something like that. So that's where so much of this can go easily wrong and go in a different direction. So I had to battle that. I had to battle the identity crisis. And I didn't really know what I was all about, didn't really know who I was. So I had to start to dive deeper into that and had to start to understand that I have to create these virtues. I have to create these values in me so that I can really understand who I am, what I'm all about, and what I want to be about now for the remainder of my life. Because essentially, we're all kind of living in a way that's creating a legacy and, in the hopes that you're going to be leaving a good legacy. So as I transitioned from being a pro athlete into, I guess, just an everyday person, that was super difficult. It took me a long time. It took me months to understand, how do I go from here to there? And the injuries didn't help. At this point of my life, I've had 9 surgeries, and I never really understood why that kind of happened for me, because I went through majority of my playing career not needing any surgeries. The first one happened when I was 12 years old from pretty much nothing. And then I had the ankle surgery. After the ankle surgery, I had 2 ACL surgeries. Then I went back to the ankle surgery and had a reconstruction. And at that point, there was 5 surgeries, and that was all by the time I was 27. And then I went on to clean out my knee again because it was having some issues. So I had another scope. So that was number 6. And then I had to, help my shoulder out from some previous issues. So that was number 7. And then just recently I had 2 surgeries on my right knee because of being hit by a car when I was riding my bike. And so I start to look at this and go, okay, I've constantly battled adversity in multiple different ways, but my biggest adversity in my entire life was the injuries that I've had to face. And the recovery process for every single one of these injuries was none of them was slow. And when you have forced to look at, okay, 3-month timelines, 6-month timelines, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, you have no choice but to create some sense of patience. And you don't, like, for me, I'm not a patient person. I struggle to be a patient person. I see so many people out there being patient, but you know what? When you have no choice but to learn patience, to learn understanding, to learn how to actually accept what it is that you can't change, then you start to kind of change yourself, because you don't have a choice. And when you don't have a choice, then what do? You have to actually start to just live it. You have to actually become this person that is more patient, this person that is more understanding, that is more accepting, because guess what? That's just it. It is what it is, as everybody likes to say. And there are so many people that get mad and frustrated that when something doesn't go their way, that's just it for them. They just get super frustrated. Most of them quit. And I have seen so many people who, maybe they do undergo, an injury themselves, and they let that injury completely debilitate them. We're talking they quit, they get angry, they change in their character, they look for shortcuts, they start to cheat themselves, they self-sabotage, they start to create these vices. And it's because they don't have the capacity to create this willingness. And you have to be willing. That's where it is. If you become more willing to, instill some of these characteristics that come from something like a surgery, then, that's where everything starts to change. But I see there's two types of people whenever there is some type of injury. It's the one person that quits, and there's the one person that works around it. That's just it. You're either a quitter or you're someone that becomes, one of those who work around it because you don't want to stop, So really it's a quitter and a non-quitter. And there's a very, very hard line between both of those people. So, when I tell people my story and they're just kind of I guess, mind blown or amazed by the fact that I don't stop, that's not amazing to me. What's amazing to me is when people do stop, because I think it's amazing that someone would actually be so unwilling to help themselves at a time of need, so unwilling to help themselves get past whatever it is that's right in front of them, that's facing them, that's staring them straight in the face, going, hey, this is your chance to shine. This is your chance to level yourself up. This is your chance to actually better yourself. And how many times do you hear those people that go, oh, it's okay? I have had so many people who have had some injury, and, the people that apparently support them are it's okay, just take a break, just take 3 months off, take a year off, don't do anything. Are those really your supporters? And this goes for anything. If someone is enabling you to stop, if someone's enabling you to quit, if someone is enabling you to slow down, are they really your supporter? Or are they someone that maybe just doesn't want to see you win, doesn't want to see you overcome, doesn't want to see you actually be successful and achieve something greater than you ever have before? That is the difference. That's the difference between a supporter and a non-supporter, because so many times are we told, to slow down, to stop, to not keep going, because guess what that means? It means an easier route. And an easier route for who exactly? That's where you got to kind of ask yourself when you're looking at all this stuff that's going on out there. And, so for me, I kept going. I kept on going no matter what, throughout every single one. The day after my surgeries, I was back in the gym. The day after, 24 hours, I was back in the gym. And it wasn't I was doing something crazy, but I was doing whatever I could. And that was the difference. I could do whatever I could. If it meant something tiny, if it meant something minute, I would go and do it. Was I in pain? Yeah. Of course I was in pain. Like anyone else, I feel pain just like anyone else. I just know how to harness that and use it in a different way. Everyone feels the same pain. It doesn't really matter, but It's those who allow that pain to dictate their pathway and dictate what goes next for them and to dictate their life moving forward. Or can you actually harness the pain, and just like look at that as an opportunity? Like, this is where every aspect of adversity is going to breed an opportunity for you if you allow it. It literally does breed an opportunity. You have to allow it to, though, because if you don't, then you're just going to be stuck. You're going to be still, and you're going to be purposeless. And that is a place that destroys so many people's hopes and dreams, really, of becoming anything and doing anything. So, I was fortunate enough to have a pretty solid support network. And, and this is why I love supporting people who don't want to stop. I love supporting people who, continue to try, because when you continue to try, you're doing your absolute best to actually keep going and keep moving forward. So the biggest thing around me playing for 20 years and, everything that I learned was, one, how to be a team player, how to support people, especially in times of need and when they're struggling, when they're not struggling. And, I want to back them when they win, and I want to back them when they don't, when they lose. Because at the same time, winning and losing, they're just as equally as important. Losing is actually way more important. And no matter what was going on for people, I wanted to always try and be supportive and be a good team player. But while I'm being that, I also wanted to try and better myself. I want to better myself to help elevate those around me. Because the better I make me, the better I can make those around me. And that's going to be the honest truth. If you can look at people who are right next to you, who are in your life, and they're trying to elevate themselves, and you're they're changing. They're kind of creating this different version of themselves. And I don't know if I like that. Guess what? That person is just trying to actually make themselves better. So instead of bringing them back down to your level, you want to actually elevate them higher. And I've had several people in my life who have looked at me becoming more successful, or me elevating my mindset or my mentality and my emotions, everything that I do, my behavior. People who see it as a negative change are the ones that just can't handle that I'm actually trying to better myself. Because guess what it does? It forces them to look inwards. When someone is trying to improve themselves, it forces everyone around you to start looking inwards, back at themselves, and they will do one of two things. They'll either reflect on themselves and what can they do better, or they will project and tell you what you need to do better. And that is the biggest difference, right? In someone that wants you to win and someone that doesn't even care if you lose. That's just it. So you got to know the difference between those two people. But I learned so much through my entire career, and I will continue to share as many stories as I can to try and showcase really what I went through. It was such a long time, so many different experiences with so many different people. And it forces you to understand that, your identity doesn't lie in just what you do. And it also forces you to understand that adversity comes no matter what you're doing. So you might think that your identity is maybe in your job or in what you do every day, but it's not. And guess what? The adversity that comes up in those areas, that's your opportunity to truly understand what you're all about and where your purpose lies. So, I really hope that this has been helpful for you to understand where you stand and what you want for yourself and the direction you're trying to go, and maybe even gives you some hope that, you know what, you might think that you're one thing, you might think that you're something, but really, if you look a little more closer and you reflect a little harder, you'll probably find that it's something completely different. And it's something that you never would have thought would have even existed. So, I really hope that this can resonate with some of you. I'm excited to really bring as much to this show as I can. Bring some amazing people on board as well, because this is going to be an opportunity for me to expand my knowledge, my experiences, my story with all of you, but also it's really an opportunity for me to bring others as well who align with it and can share their own story and everything that they've experienced. So thank you so much for listening, guys. I hope that today's been amazing. Please stay tuned. We're going to bring these shows up way more often and people on board of them, and I'm super excited for that. All I can say, guys, at the end of every show is going to be exactly the same. All right, go be great.